Welcome to the Family Brand Show. We're Chris and Melissa Smith of FamilyBrand.com, husband and wife, parents of 5, and we want to help you take back your family and to live life on your terms.
And we know being a family can feel really overwhelming. Parents tell us they feel like they're being pulled in a million different directions. It's so challenging to navigate the uncertainty and all the chaos that's happening in the world right now.
And that's why we want to bring you every single week actionable tips and strategies that you can implement in your daily life to become a better parent, to become a better spouse, and to build a stronger family. And look, there's never been a better time and a more important time than right now to take back your family. You can define what your family stands for, or the world is going to do it for you. And the world needs strong families now more than ever. And it starts right here with your family. Everyone, we are so stoked for this episode of the Family Brand Podcast. And Melissa and I are joined by Bubba Page. Super honored and stoked to have you, Bubba. Thanks for being here, man.
I love it. You guys are making this happen. Finally, we got our schedules to align.
That's right. And for those of you who are seeing any of this visually, Melissa and I are obviously, usually in the office, the home office together recording. I'm down in Phoenix today for some work. And so we're in 3 separate locations. So Bubba and I met through the world of business, met through a really good friend. Interesting, had a phone call, got to know each other a little bit. Just within minutes of talking to Bubba, I was like, man, I love this guy. He's awesome. My kind of people. Like I want to connect with him more. We started following each other on Instagram. And then randomly, I think maybe a month later, maybe not even that, I'm at this camp that you guys have heard me talking about, Girl Dad, which I'm absolutely a huge fan of. And then I look up, we're in the swimming pool, and I look up and I'm like, we just met like over the phone. And then we got to meet in person. And,
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, just stayed connected. And I've had this feeling for a while. And then I saw Bubba again recently at Girl Dad this summer. So 2 summers in a row. And it just hit me. I was like, we ought to have Bubba on the podcast. I think he could really contribute. So I have to ask first.
I hope I can. Let's see how it goes.
No, for sure. For sure.
If I remember correctly, Chris, the first year at Girl Dad, Bubba and his daughters won the dance off. Is that true?
Yes. Much to mine and my daughter's chagrin. We were hoping for a victory.
My oldest daughter, she looked at me and she says, "Dad, we're going all out." And I was like, all right, you want to go out? Let's go. Let's do this. So yes, my 2 daughters and I competed in the dance off, and it was intimidating. I mean, there was 1,000 people on the floor.
Yeah.
Anyway, my girls looked great, and I just tried to keep up. That's for sure.
It is awesome though to see the number of dads out there just like willing to do anything and get out of their comfort zones and look ridiculous for their daughters. So that's totally fun.
That's exactly right.
So this is something I actually want. Is Bubba your real name? Is it a nickname?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Bubba, I have been called Bubba since I was a fat baby, and the name stuck. And my mom was a little 5'3" woman, and I was almost a 10-pound baby. And that's literally what I've been called my entire life. But it's even on my, I served as a volunteer missionary in Brazil. It says Elder Bubba Page on it. Like, it's been around for a long time. But my real name is actually Brandt, like Brandt, Rembrandt almost.
Brandt.
And I've just never been called that. It's a great name. I have nothing wrong with that name, but hasn't been me.
Yeah. It's awesome. Yeah. I can actually see it. You could definitely be a Brandt. Very dapper, handsome Brandt, but you're also a very dapper, handsome Bubba.
Sometimes when I put my cowboy hat on, I become Cowboy Brandt, and it just happens. Maybe it's my alter ego, but
well, actually, I wanna kick us off by talking about something that we started talking about before we hit record. It's interesting that so I got on the call at the same time Melissa and Bubba did, but I was on mute because I was doing some other things trying to get set up in the office. And I heard them talking about, being a light and sharing your light. And I think sometimes it's fascinating to me how many, like, you'll see something that starts just happening a lot in your life. And maybe that's because you're looking for it, or maybe it's God or the universe putting it in your path. That seems to happen to me a lot, like a theme or an idea. And so last night I went and spoke to my sister, Kristen. She runs a class called From Prison to Possibility for men and women getting out of prison or struggling with addiction. And that was part of her story and her journey. And I go up there about once a month and speak to her group, and it's super inspiring. And last minute, I just thought to ask any of my kids, like, hey, any of you guys want to come to Kristen's class with me tonight? And our youngest daughter, Indy, was like, I want to go. And then on the way there, I already knew I was going to talk about being a light. And then Indy was like, hey, my word for the year is light. I was like, oh, that's right. Your word for the year is light. And then I totally forgot that my sister Kristen, her newsletter she sends into prisons that gives so much hope to so many men and women is called The Light.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I forgot that the reason she named it that was she told the story last night that I spoke at her trial when she was on trial to either get 5 years of prison or 12 years. So like pretty big. So I was advocating for 5, but also, told the judge I think she should go to prison. But I shared this quote, what is to give light must endure burning, by Viktor Frankl. But a lot of times it's the very burning that we go through that gives us our light. It's the trials that we have that without the trials and the burning, you wouldn't have the light. And with all of the things that are just going on in the world today and, like so much of the tragedy and what's happened with, the news recently around Charlie Kirk and the school shootings with children. And it's like, we just had this conversation as a family that I asked my kids, I was like, can you turn on darkness? And they were like, no, yes. So I asked my sister Kristen's class the same thing last night. I was like, hey, one of you guys get up in the room right now and turn on darkness. Someone go flip the switch, just turn on darkness. And they're like, well, you can't. And I'm like, well, so then how does darkness exist? And like, well, you'd have to turn off the light. So that's a fascinating thought to me, that the only way darkness can be allowed to exist, and light allows darkness. Like it's not the other way around. Darkness has no power over light. Darkness is only allowed and permitted to exist in the absence of light. And I think one of the things that the world needs right now more than anything from all of us is our light. And the brighter the light we shine, the less darkness there is allowed to exist. And there is darkness. So Bubba, I see you, man, like you're a demonstration of that. And I see you being unafraid and fearless around sharing your light, like I feel like you share your light around entrepreneurship, you share your light around family, you share your light around being a single dad, you share your light around Jesus. And so, yeah, maybe just.
Yeah. Well, I feel compelled to do it. It's something that, I had somebody reach out and ask me like, hey, could you help more men share this light out there? And I was like, I don't know how to teach that. It just feels like a calling almost. Like I feel compelled to share my experience, especially my relationship with God, my relationship with my kids. By the way, for those listening, you might not know, but I have 8 children. So that's probably a big part that you might want to understand. I have 4 boys, I have 4 girls, aging 5 to 15, and it is it is the joy of my life, right? And so when I get a chance to share my beliefs in God and fatherhood, it I end up becoming a better person, I feel like, when I start sharing. And I know I process a lot when I talk. So being able to be on a podcast like this and share the feelings that are deep into my soul, coming from an entrepreneurial background and building businesses, selling businesses, failing them, bootstrapping, raising venture capital, all of those things in the end. It all fails in comparison to my relationship with God and my kids. And I think, we look at our true purpose and what is our mission here on this earth. And, I had to do a deep dive. And really, I went through almost like an awakening process, almost a rebirth in kind of the 2016, 17-ish era. And I really wanted to know, what was that mission? What was that promise that I had made to God before I even came to this planet, into this earth? And it feels like what I'm being led into is to help people, number one, come to Jesus. And if I can do that through communicating about fatherhood, about entrepreneurship, and even investing, which I love to do, maybe I can help with self-reliance and abundance. And when people have abundance, they tend to want to help other people. They tend to have maybe a little bit more freedom and free time to focus on the things that matter most. When you're working paycheck to paycheck and you're just trying to make ends meet, it's really difficult to have that additional bandwidth to focus on maybe the things that matter most. And so I hope that I can help millions of people to find that abundance and that financial freedom, which gives them time freedom to do what they need to do, not just what they want to do, but what they're supposed to do, what God wants them to do. You hear people all the time when they reach financial independence, it's like, I can now do whatever I want, with whomever I want, whenever I want, wherever I want. And I love that concept. But I think there's an even higher goal, which is to do what God wants you to do with who God wants you to do it with,
Mm,
in his timing and what his will is. But it takes a lot to get to a point where you can, I think, dedicate that time and energy necessary. Now, anyone in any phase of life can build and grow their relationship with God. There's no limit, no financial requirement to do that. But through the patterns that I've seen, usually when their base needs are being met, they're able to make some deeper level decisions and focus on maybe those things that matter most. That's my soapbox, guys.
it's beautiful. So one question I had, and then, or Melissa, I'll let you go
No,
since I kicked it off.
no, go ahead. You said yes.
How does one then discover God's will for them? This I like let's just assume, because some people may find that hard to wrap their mind around or even believe, like, oh yeah, right. You mean to tell me like God has a will for my life, or like,
Yeah,
but let's assume that someone could like, okay, I'm open to that. I'm open to the idea that I don't know if I believe in it, but I'm at least
yeah.
open to that maybe there's something out there bigger than me that has a, how would you start to find that, or how would you start to tap into what his will is for you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I can only speak from my own experience, right? And I've been coaching different folks to be able to help find their own, and some of these things have helped them as well. So, but for me personally, this is how it happened to me. Well, number one, I had to be humbled. And so in 2016, I had to shut down one of my companies, and it was devastating. It was absolutely devastating. And I looked at my reputation. I was this entrepreneur, and I was winning awards, and then I had to shut down a business, and it really took a toll on my pride, my ego, and I had to look inward and say, like, who am I? What am I supposed to be doing here? And it was interesting because I did feel compelled, inspired by God to begin and start that business. And I can now look back years later and say, I believe, having to shut down the business, it didn't end up working like we had thought it could. Um, I believe that was a beautiful way that God taught me some lessons, and I can now be grateful for it. I wasn't grateful then. Um, but so that humility, sometimes you have to be compelled to be humbled, right? The scriptures talk about. The goal is that we can just humble ourselves without having to be compelled. But unfortunately, I needed to be compelled. So that was the first step, is I was seeking God's guidance because I was just wondering, who am I? Where
Mm,
am I? What am I doing here? What is my main and core purpose? And so having that sincere question that I had in my soul, then I turned to God in that way, instead of shaking my fist like, how dare you, you told me to start this thing and it didn't work, and turning bitter. I tried to turn better, and that was leaning on God through that process. And so I took a deeper dive into his word, and I started studying more diligently. And it wasn't just reading or listening, it was true study with pen and notes and guides to the scriptures to try and understand them better. And that was one key piece. My prayers, I tried to focus on communicating with God in a different way than just the repetitive, day-to-day prayer. But I tried as often as I could to be on my knees. For whatever reason, for me, it expressed my humility towards him. And look, you can pray anywhere you are, eyes open, eyes closed, kneeling, not, you can pray anytime. And I tend to do it all the time, especially when I'm driving. But there were specific times where I felt like on my knees, was just more important. And then what was a fascinating thing, and this is the whole story. Hopefully people can follow along. I ended up dedicating a sacred space in my home. And when I say dedicate, it just means that I made it a specific purpose for a space. If this could be your closet, it could be your bedroom, it could be a part of your office, it could be something like that. For me, I found solace in my closet, which is so funny. But it was a place where I could close the door and I could have sacred time with God and to speak with him and pour out my soul. Um, and so when I did do that on my knees, I would try it even out loud when I felt like I was able to do so. And that connection grew over time. Another thing that I started doing was I started worshiping outside of the traditional Sunday Sabbath worship. And, I love going to church. I love, feeling that his spirit as I go. And I love my kids to have that experience. But I tried to go outside of the normal Sabbath worship. I would worship every week in a place like a temple. And so whether it's a synagogue or another place that you go to, for me, I felt like I needed to go into this place of worship, the temple. And as I did, I went weekly for almost an entire year without feeling some grandiose, miracle.
Mm.
And it took me, I think I always say that I think I had a thick enough skull that it took me almost, over 50 times of going to the temple on a weekly basis before I felt the windows of heaven open. And it just gave me a new experience, a spiritual enough experience that taught me that it wasn't that I just like should go and do this deeper worship, but I needed it. I needed the extra strength. I needed the extra power and clarity of mind that I felt like God was giving me. And at that moment, it changed my heart. And I felt like this ability to receive inspiration on a deeper level. Look, it's not some this is a step-by-step process for me that took time and it took sacrifice, it took energy. And so when someone asks me, well, how do I find out this mission? Look, some people might be able to get it with one prayer, bam, it comes and it's right there. For me, unfortunately, it took time and energy and sacrifice. But then the sincerity of asking truly to our God, what am I here for? What did you send me to this earth to do? And I believe that he's trying to talk to us 24/7, every minute of every day. And it's us that as he's speaking to us, we're blocking it through whatever our actions that may not be necessarily appropriate to have his spirit to be with us, or our thoughts or our words. And or we may not be choosing to create a deeper relationship through not doing some of those simple answers that we just talked about, scriptures, his word, prayer, pondering and meditation, temple, or some kind of outside of the church worship, going on Sundays. Those to me are some of the simple basic answers we hear all the time, typically when you go to church. But when people say, like, what's the secret? What's the path to God to create this relationship with Jesus? It's those simple answers. It's the simple and easy things that can bring about miracles in your life. And I know some people are seeking for a deeper answer. And to me, it really is those 4 pieces that will lead and guide you to be in the right places at the right time and to be able to connect with God on a deeper level. So when I did this process with me, I kept a pen and a paper ready. So when I pray in that type of mighty prayer, sincere prayer, I truly believe that God is going to answer my prayer. And sometimes the answers come immediately, and I'm able to write down answers. And again, answers to me is not it's not a voice to me, just for me. Some people may have that. It's not an angel that comes into my room and speaks to me. To me, it's thoughts that come into my mind. And I feel like as long as that thought is good, then it's most likely from God. Now, I'll find out if that thought is from God when I act on it. So I write it down. I think about this thought, this idea that comes into my head. And then I go forward with faith, believing that it truly did come from God. And I'll know fairly soon by going down that path after I've made the decision to move in that direction that he will that he'll confirm whether or not that was from him. And to me, I tend to hear 3 voices in my head. And maybe this is helpful to people out there. On a day-to-day basis, I feel like we have 3 voices. We have the one that comes from God. Typically, it's super small and quiet. And it's hard to hear if you've got music bumping up loud, if we're not in like a good mindset. It's hard to hear, and usually the inspiration from God to me comes as the first thought. The first thought that comes into my head for me, so long as it's good, is coming from God. And then what happens in the very next one is a confusing thought. It's like, well, no. I can't, I'm not good enough to go and talk to people about coming to Jesus. Like, that's not me. And why would I do that? Like, that doesn't make sense. To me, sometimes that confusion is my own thoughts, my own mind, the natural man that comes with me, is I'm confusing and jumbling what God just gave me. And then the third thought is usually for me is it's negative. It's you're not worthy to do things like that. That's not, you can't do that. Nobody's going to listen to you because who are you to write a book about, fatherhood or to talk about the principles of Jesus and how it's impacted my entrepreneurial career? Why start a movement, fatherhood movement? Why would you begin that? Anyway, so look, if we have these three voices in our heads, it's our job to figure out who's speaking what and to call it out for what it is. And you know what? Not today, Satan is something that I'll say often when those temptations arise or when the negative thoughts come into my head. And I try to teach my kids the same. Look, not today, Satan. You might try again tomorrow, but not today. You're not going to win this time. And I teach my kids and I pray for them to recognize that we are at war. There is a spiritual warfare. And with the things that have come to light in the recent news, this is not just a physical warfare. We are in a spiritual war. And God has been calling many of us to become warriors for Jesus. And I try to teach my boys and my girls that they are warriors for Christ. And it's a daily battle. And Satan is doing everything he can to take our light away, to tempt us to do what he wants and to lose the part of God in us, or to even confuse who we are and where we came from. And we are sons and daughters of the Most High God. We have his part of his power within us, and we have the ability to do his will and to be a warrior for him and combat evil, and to bring that light into the world. I think we're all meant to do it. It's part of our path. It's part of our plan. All of us have to go through some sorts of hell throughout our life. And like you said in the beginning, we have to go through some of that in order to become who we truly are, who we are truly meant to be. And going through a divorce, it was a hell. I would wish it upon no one, not even my worst enemy. And yet I can now look back and say, I don't know if I would have taken the depths of healing that I needed. And, Jesus was my master healer. I don't know if I would have taken those steps if I didn't go through that sorrowful, that horrible, experience, that brokenness that I felt. And so, whoever's listening, we see you, we hear you. We know that you're going through something hard right now. And believe me, God knows it more than any of us. And Jesus has gone below everything so that he knows what you've been through. And so instead of getting bitter and shaking your fist at God, try everything you can to turn to him. And I know he's there and his arm is outstretched. It's waiting for you to just grab it. And he can pull you out of that depth and bring the light back into your life. So that's a little testimony for me.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Bubba. As you were talking about your own personal journey, it reminded me of some parallels, like of my own journey of how, that question of what are my gifts? Like, what am I meant to do in this world? What is my purpose? I just thought it was interesting. Like for me, it did start with, like you're saying, prayer, like sincere prayer. And it was over the course of like a few years, like this journey. And when you talked about going weekly to the temple, I was like, oh, there was months in my life where I went weekly we were living in Hawaii at the time, to this meditation garden. And, you weren't allowed to have your phone there. And you could bring your journal. So I was like meditating, journaling, like every single week. I think it's so interesting that a lot of times those questions about who we are and what are we meant to do on this world, they take a little bit of effort and they take work, and they're not just given to us from the outset.
Amen. I mean, when people talk about have you done the work? Look, I'm in the dating world now, and it's weird, guys. It's 20 years ago is when I was dating before. But one of the non-negotiables for me is are people doing the work? So there's a little tidbit if anybody's listening. I want to make sure that they are doing the work. It's not that we have to be fully healed. I believe that healing is a lifelong process. But are they self-aware enough to know that they have wounds and that they need to be healing through that process? And that means doing a work. So when we're trying to find out who we are and what we're meant to do on this earth, we have to do the work. And so that comes with a lot of depth of introspection and forgiving others and asking to be forgiven. And as you go through that process, you're going to look back at your childhood and realize, oh my gosh, that experience was traumatic. Even if it wasn't a big T trauma, it was a little T thing where maybe you didn't feel seen or heard or loved, and maybe you didn't feel safe in a certain point of your life. And so the little Bubba inside you decided to just freeze in time at that moment and to fight, flight, freeze, fawn, whatever that was to you, it froze. And then when you receive any type of trigger throughout your life, it comes alive. And that little person inside you, that little child that was traumatized by whatever that thing was, is trying to protect you as an adult. And unfortunately, it comes out in our adult relationships. And so I know for me, I felt like there's one thing I learned through therapy and healing retreats and this process was that I needed to earn love. That love wasn't just readily available, that I had to do things in order to earn it. And as I went through the process of realizing that no, like I am loved and that I didn't have to go do something to earn it, that I just am. And I can believe that part of myself. And then the other part was that I was more from a feeling loved basis, I became a little bit more anxious. And there's things called attachment style that people, I would say it's very healthy to learn. There's a book called Attached, and I would highly recommend it to those listening, so that you can come to know your own from your childhood of how you feel loved. And so some people are more anxious, some people are more avoidant, and then the idea is that we can become more secure in our ways that we love and how we feel about ourselves. Now, all of us have insecurities. No matter what, we all have some things that we're insecure about. But the goal is to work towards security so that when triggers show up, and they will, or something that affects us that makes us kind of tense up a little bit, we can, number one, recognize what's happening to our bodies and know that if we are receiving some kind of trigger, to me, it's a message to my own body and mind that I have something to work on, that I have something I need to go deeply inside and say, okay, why did that thing that person said make me tense up a little bit? Why did I freeze in that moment when that happened in my life? And if I can dig deeper, it usually comes back to an event, an experience that you've had, in your history of your life. And as I've incorporated more of the psychological processing with God and the atonement of Jesus Christ to heal, that's where I found the most peace and the most healing, is when I bring Jesus into this healing process. So then when we're seeking for our mission, we may start to understand deeper of why has God given us some of those experiences? And so how can we help others by sharing it? And whether that's building a business, whether it's building a community, whether that's sharing online, whatever that is for you, I have found that process to be an ongoing journey, that you may find the initial inklings of what you need to do. And as you act upon it, God will give you more along the way. As we take steps towards listening and heeding his word, as we hear him, we'll find further light and knowledge as we go down this path. And I'm a true believer that he wants all of us to be successful, not just financially, but in life, as parents, as individuals, sons and daughters of God. He wants us to have that success. That's at least that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
It's awesome. So for the sake of time, I wish we could, there's so many things I want to ask you about, and I know we only have 10 minutes or so here left. but you talk about these experiences we go through, and then that is something you can potentially help others with. Will you talk about fatherhood? Like what occurs for you around that? You know, you have 8 children, you're a single dad, right? We just share with us some of the
Yeah.
yeah.
I think, I mean, number one, fatherhood's one of the greatest callings you can possibly have. And being a husband, being a father, this is why we came, right? We came to receive a body on this earth. And I believe we're meant to be tested. And the best ways we can do that is to be a husband and a father. And so when we're blessed with children that I believe we're living with God in a spirit form, and whether they were assigned or they got to pick, I don't know. But these children come into our lives, and it is our duty as a mother and a father to teach them correct principles. Now, they are their own person and they'll make their own choices. They have agency, but it is our job to teach them about Jesus. It's our duty and requirement. We will be punished or penalized for not doing it as a parent. And I feel like it's one of the greatest calling that we can have is to be able to raise the greatest investment, long-term investment that we have. How will you measure your life? And Clayton Christensen talks about this, and just investing in these children and not knowing what's going to happen for 30 plus years as they become adults themselves. So what I've found is that when I become a more intentional father, I find that my relationships deepen, that the children have more success, that there's less stress or anxiety in their lives when I can be as intentional of a father as possible. And so what I've done is I'm in the process of launching the fatherhood movement. So fatherhoodmovement.com, it's not ready. It's not there yet, but I'm getting closer. And I feel this deep conviction of helping as many fathers and of course mothers as a byproduct to be able to recognize the importance of that role in their life. And I feel like so many of us fathers, we go to work, we try to provide, we try to be the protector, but we get home after that long day at work, let's say, and we're exhausted and we don't have necessarily a plan of action because our spouse steps up and takes care of things. And I think that's not the right way to go about it. I do believe that fathers are meant to help lead in the home, not just in work. And it's not to say that women can't. Of course you can. Women, you can do anything with or without us, and you're going to be phenomenally successful with or without us. But I do believe as a joint man and a woman, when they come together and they're able to fall into their truly divine feminine and divine masculine roles, that's where you'll find the deepest source of joy, of not of temporary happiness, but of true depth of joy when we live in what I believe God has shown us through the scriptures, the examples of how that marital relationship should be. And so when a man comes home, I hope, well, let me back up. I have found when I have structure and when I'm able to lead with intention of, are we going to pray as a family? Well, I'm going to lead that charge and make sure we do. Are we going to study scriptures in the home as family? Yeah, I'm going to lead and take charge in that regard. It doesn't mean that I do everything and I'm always controlling the narrative. That's not the whole point, but I want to ensure that it gets done. And that I will lead in the mental focus of where our home and our thoughts go. In our action, what are we doing as a family together? What activities are we doing? Are we going on vacation together? Can I help to encourage and lead in that realm? And then, of course, as a team, as a husband and a wife, you work in a team to make sure that those things happen. But so I started writing down a lot of the things that I have been doing for years and a lot of the things that I wanted to do better. And as I started to write these things down, it became a lot more than just a couple of pages. And so I'm in the process of building, it's a book. It's called the Father Operating System. And this Father Operating System, I toyed between fatherhood and entrepreneurship, or fatherhood versus entrepreneurship. But I think the Father Operating System, it's a structure, it's a guide, it's a plan, it's a map that other men can follow, other families can follow, that will give them direct instruction, and they can customize it to their own lives. But, are we praying as a family on a daily basis? Are we studying his word as a family? Are we scheduling trips to go as a family? If what you've done as an entrepreneur building a business and you have KPIs and metrics and you have conferences that you go to, you hold one-on-ones with your team members, you're putting up a structural plan, a strategic plan for the different entities within your business. You set goals and you have priorities. Like these are all things we do when we build a business. Why aren't we doing this in our family? And I know you guys do a phenomenal job with family brand. And I learned, and you guys probably do this, and I need to dive in deeper to your content. A friend of mine, Mike Allen, he is wonderful in the breathwork section. I mean, he's an entrepreneur. He's done his own thing. He's been successful. But then he walked me through like my own family crest. And it was such an interesting process. And I've worked with him to include that in this book, in the family operating system. And he'll get all the credit because this is not mine. But this crest, when I say crest, think about the old school shield that the old families would have. And you put this purpose behind what's on that shield, what imagery is on that shield, what things are going behind the shield. Is it an axe? Is it a sword? Is it is it an arrow? Are there mountains on it? Is there a cross? What is it that is in this family crest that encapsulates what you are as a family? And as I created my own, I felt inspiration. I felt like it was a godly principle to go through and to give to my children as a Page child, as a son or daughter for me. This is who we are as a people, as a family. And as I teach them these correct principles, they will make their own choices moving forward, whether or not they choose to live by those, godly principles or not. But it's my duty, I feel like, to help share my beliefs and my what God's taught me, and hopefully help them miss landmines that I've had to hit in my life. And to me, all of this comes back to this fatherhood, this motherhood, this divinely godly role that we've been given. On a deep level, this is how we return to our God, is to go through this process the best we can and ask for forgiveness when we mess up, because we all will, all the time. But to me, that's like my passion behind fatherhood. I'm hopefully can put a little drop of light in the world as I share some of this stuff.
It's beautiful, man.
You guys, I've just been on a soapbox.
No, it's awesome. It's so many good things. And as Chris mentioned, like, oh, I know that you wanted to talk more about certain things that I'm sure I know Chris well enough to know, like, oh, I bet he wanted to go deeper on talking about the voices that we hear. And there's so many ways, directions we could have taken this to go deeper. Before we wrap up, I had this question as I was preparing for this conversation with you that I thought I would ask you at the end. And that is, you're talking about leaving your kids with this crest and these things and these values. If you could distill all of it down to one thing, like, what do you want your kids to remember more than anything when they look back on being raised by Bubba Page and their life with you?
So what is my legacy?
Yeah, that'd be a different but same. Yeah.
Well, what do I hope my legacy is for my children, which is to me the most important. I want them to know my belief and faith in Jesus Christ. Like that is number one. I need them and want them to know that is who I am to the core, that I'm trying my best. And I'll ask forgiveness like I do all the time from them if I get frustrated or if I get, if I mess up. But I want them to know that is what I cherish most. And to me, I hope that they see a positive outlook on life that I would like them to emulate as best as possible. There's so much good in the world that we can see, even with all the wickedness and evil around us, that you can still see and feel God's love every single day and expressing gratitude. So I hope that they see through my example that I love God, that I have so much gratitude for what I have in my life, and that I say this all the time. They'll laugh if they ever hear this. I love spending time with my kids. when I ask, hey, what was your favorite part of this trip? Or what was your favorite part of the vacation we just took? And they go on and say the certain things that were their favorite part. I always respond with, my favorite part is that I got to spend time with you kids. I absolutely love that. I hope that they, when they're giving the eulogy, that they can say that my dad loved spending time with us. And that they knew that I loved them. And I tell them often. That's what I hope. That's what I pray for. I hope I'm living a life that will lead to that legacy.
Beautiful. Thank you, Bubba. I invite anyone
Beautiful, man.
listening to go connect with Bubba before you have any last words, Chris.
Yeah, man, just beautiful what you're doing. Like, I love how bold you are in your faith and bold you are in what you feel called to do and sharing your light. And that is how I experience you, man, that you really are committed. Father, you're committed son, you're committed, believer and follower of Jesus. And just appreciate you sharing your light, man, and coming on and sharing it with the family brand community.
Thanks, guys. Well, I didn't mean to bring tears on the show, but sometimes it just happens.
I do it
It's
all the
happened a
time.
lot.
Okay, so go connect with Bubba, bubbapage.com. We could have talked so much more, like I said, about your entrepreneurial journey and what it's like being a single dad raising 8 kids. Go find him.
If somebody wants to learn more about the business and entrepreneur stuff, connect with me on LinkedIn, right? There's not too many Bubba pages on there. So connect with me on LinkedIn. If you want to hear more about the family life, being the single dad, doing the fatherhood thing, Instagram is definitely the way to go. Bubba Page on Instagram. And you guys, thanks for having me on. It's so good to be able to connect deeper with you guys. And we could probably do 4 or 5 more of these episodes and talk about a lot more. So I'm glad we got connected.
Thanks, Bubba.
All right. So that is it for today's episode of the Family Brand Podcast.
But before you go, we have something fun for you.
Yeah. Like, if you've ever wondered, okay, so how's our family culture actually doing? We've got an incredible quiz for that.
Good news, it's quick, it's free, and when you're done with that quiz, we'll even email you this awesome PDF full of practical ways to strengthen your family culture right away.
So all you have to do is go to familybrand.com/quiz, take the quiz, grab the PDF.
We'll see you next time.